All right. So are you ready to go deep on this one? Because today we are diving deep into integrity.
Ooh, integrity.
I am so excited about this one. With help from this really fascinating interview with Harvard Business School professor Michale Jensen.
Yeah.
I think he really goes beyond just like those typical do the right thing cliches
Right.
and really kind of gets to the core of why integrity is so vital,
Yeah.
not just ethically,
Yeah.
but for achieving real success.
And he's coming at this from kind of a business perspective. So
Right.
it's not a, be a good person.
Exact.
It's
And
this is
this is going to help you.
how you succeed.
Yeah. And I'm excited to unpack some of these ideas because he even defines integrity in a way I'd never considered before.
Oh. Oh, how
Like, it's not just about keeping promises,
Yeah.
which kind of the traditional view,
Right.
but about being, like, whole and complete,
Mm.
which is a much more powerful idea.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, like he says it's almost like a law of nature, like gravity. It just is. And understanding that power can unlock so much,
Okay.
both personally and professionally.
So let's say you've made a commitment.
Okay.
Maybe it's at work.
Mm-hmm.
And then due to unforeseen circumstances,
Yeah.
you realize you can't deliver exactly as promised.
Yeah.
Would Jensen say that true integrity lies in acknowledging that up front
Yes.
and taking responsibility,
Yes.
even if it means facing consequences?
Exactly. And even if you can't
Even if you can't.
keep the original promise, you can still honor your word.
Okay, so it's not about like blindly sticking to the letter of the agreement,
Right.
but about aligning your actions with your values,
Just suck.
even when things get tough.
Totally.
But see, this is where I get tripped up because wouldn't people take advantage of that?
I think that's a common concern.
Right.
But he argues that when you actually do that,
Mm-hmm.
when you consistently honor your word,
Uh,
what you're really doing is building a reputation
okay.
for trustworthiness. And that will actually attract the right kinds of people and opportunities to you.
So you create a force field that repels the
Yes.
bad people
Oh, yes.
and attracts the good
I
ones.
love that analogy. The force field.
It's like the integrity force.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
integrity shield.
Okay, so it's not just about being good.
Right.
It's about setting yourself up for success
Yes.
in a really sustainable way.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this idea of being like whole and complete
Right.
tie into all of this?
Well, so he breaks down a person's word
Okay.
into 6 different parts.
Okay. So it's not just what you say out loud,
Right.
but it's also what you know,
Yes.
what's expected of you,
Yes.
what you stand for,
Mm-hmm.
and even societal norms you operate within.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Whoa.
It's comprehensive.
So even unspoken expectations matter.
Totally.
Like if my friend always drives me to the airport,
Uh-huh.
I can't just assume that that's always going to happen
Yeah.
without acknowledging it.
Right? Like that's an expectation that's been set,
Yeah.
but never spoken. Wow. But it's still part of your word.
So if we're not mindful of these unspoken commitments,
Mm-hmm.
we could be slipping into out-of-integrity behavior without even realizing it.
Yes, absolutely. And those small breaches can, over time, really erode trust
And create a sense of
and create unworkability.
unworkability.
Yeah.
And
Interesting. He uses that word a lot.
okay.
And I think it's so powerful.
Because if things aren't workable,
Yeah.
then nothing gets done.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's much harder to get things done.
This reminds me of something else that he mentioned, which is that
Yeah.
integrity isn't just a personal virtue. Like it
Yeah.
applies to objects and systems too.
Totally.
What did you mean by that?
So think of it like a car.
Okay.
Like a car designed well, maintained properly, and used as intended is operating with integrity.
Okay.
It's reliable,
Yeah.
performs well,
Makes sense.
but if you neglect maintenance,
Yeah.
use the wrong fuel,
You start to compromise its integrity.
you break it.
Yeah, it starts to break down.
Yeah.
Becomes less workable.
Right.
So the same applies to a computer system,
All right.
a business, even a society.
So hitting the snooze button on my alarm and skipping that workout,
Uh-huh.
I'm actually living out of integrity with myself.
Potentially. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good one to think about.
Yeah. And I might seem like a small thing,
Right.
but those small things,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
And they create unworkability in your life
Yeah.
when you're not being consistent.
Okay, so integrity is not just essential for like ethical reasons,
Right.
but for achieving peak performance.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another point that he made that really struck me,
Okay.
which is that he says integrity is a necessary condition for maximum performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a nice to have.
Not a bonus.
It's a fundamental element for success.
Right.
Like, you can't have one without the other. Totally agree. And he actually argues that the cost of out-of-integrity behavior is way higher
Oh,
than
yeah.
people realize.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that neglecting your car maintenance thing.
Right.
Like, you might save time or money in the short term, but eventually it'll catch up to you.
Totally. And in the business world, those costs can be enormous.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like, think about the subprime mortgage crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that wasn't just greed that caused that meltdown.
Right.
It was a systemic lack of integrity at multiple levels.
On every level.
Lenders approving loans
Yep.
to people who couldn't afford them, ratings agencies,
Yes.
rubber stamping risky securities,
Yep.
investors ignoring all the warning signs.
All focused on short-term gains.
Yeah.
And it led to a near collapse.
Of the entire global financial system.
It's crazy.
It's a really stark reminder that integrity isn't just like this abstract moral concept.
Right.
It's actually the bedrock of a stable economy. And as we've been discussing, even personal success.
Totally.
But he goes even further.
Okay, tell me more.
He says you should never
Okay.
apply cost-benefit analysis
Yeah.
to the decision of whether to honor your word.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems kind of counterintuitive in a business context.
Right, because we're always taught to weigh costs and benefits.
Exactly.
But what he's saying is,
Yeah.
if you're constantly calculating
Yeah.
whether it's worth it to keep your word, then your word becomes
Meaningless.
additional
Yeah.
and meaningless.
Right. Why would anyone trust
Right.
someone who only does what's best for them?
It makes you wonder how often we justify breaking promises
Yeah.
or cutting corners
Right.
based on some calculated gain.
Exactly.
And we're eroding trust along the way.
All the time, probably more than we realize.
Right. So if we're not supposed to weigh costs and benefits, how do we navigate those tough decisions
Right.
where honoring our word might come at a price?
That is the question.
And that is something that we are going to dig into
Yes.
next time.
Along with his concept of the veil of invisibility.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I know, it's such a good one.
We'll see you next time.
So, yeah.
All right, so we're back. And before we jump into this whole veil of invisibility thing,
Okay.
I just have to ask, what happens
Yeah.
when it's like truly impossible to keep your word?
Okay.
Like life throws curveballs, right?
Right.
Things change. Does that mean you've like automatically failed the integrity test?
That's a great question, and it kind of gets to the heart of what Jensen's talking about.
Okay.
Remember, he differentiates between keeping your word and honoring your word. So even when you can't fulfill that original promise, integrity lies in acknowledging that shift,
Okay.
communicating openly with everyone involved, and taking steps to minimize any negative impact.
So it's not about like vanishing or
Correct.
making excuses when things go sideways.
Exactly.
It's about owning it.
It's about that alignment of action and values that we were talking about.
Okay.
So being upfront and transparent
Yeah.
can actually strengthen relationships.
Even when things haven't gone to plan.
Yeah, people are more understanding than we think,
That's good.
if we're honest.
Yeah. As long as you're not being shady.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into this veil of invisibility.
Okay.
What is he talking about here?
Ooh, this is so good.
Okay.
So he's talking about the ways we blind ourselves to the true cost of out-of-integrity behavior.
Okay.
And he actually outlines 11 factors that contribute to this veil.
11.
Right? 11.
Well, okay, I probably don't have time to unpack all 11 of those.
Right.
But is there one that really stands out to you?
As particularly relevant.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind is the tendency to rationalize
Okay.
our out-of-integrity behavior.
Mm.
We are masters at coming up with excuses and justifications
Right.
for why we didn't do what we said we would do.
Totally. We're really good at that.
We blame external circumstances.
Uh-huh.
We minimize the impact of our actions or convince ourselves our intentions were good enough.
It's like we build these elaborate stories
Yes.
to shield us from the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those stories become part of the veil,
Okay.
obscuring the real cost of our actions.
Not just from others,
Right.
but from ourselves.
Totally.
So how do we start to like see through this veil
Okay.
and confront that true cost of out of integrity behavior?
So much of it starts with awareness, like we've been talking about.
Okay.
And I think a great place to start is paying attention to the language we use.
Okay.
Like, how often do you find yourself saying things like,
Oh, like I'll try,
I'll do
or
my best.
I'll do my best. You
Yeah.
start making a clear commitment.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Right.
Especially when I'm not really sure if I can follow through.
But what happens is,
Those phrases, they create wiggle room.
right,
They allow us to kind of back out without feeling like we've broken our word.
so it becomes part of
You
the,
become part of the veil,
Yay.
obscuring our true level of commitment.
okay, so by being more precise with our language,
Yes.
we're strengthening our integrity.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
Because when you make a clear commitment,
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely to hold yourself accountable
Okay.
and follow through.
It's like drawing a line in the sand.
Yes.
This is what I stand for.
Yes.
This is what I'm going to do.
Totally.
Man, this veil of invisibility thing is really making me think about all the subtle ways
Right.
that we might be undermining our integrity
Mm-hmm.
without even realizing it.
It's eye-opening.
Okay, what about those situations where honoring your word comes at a significant personal cost?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Right, like how do you balance integrity with self-preservation?
So Jensen doesn't offer easy answers here,
Okay.
but he encourages us to really question those calculations we make. Like, are we truly acting in alignment with our values?
Okay.
Or are we letting fear, convenience, the desire for approval
Right.
dictate our choices?
So it's about being ruthlessly honest with ourselves
Totally.
and making sure that our actions are congruent with our deepest values,
Exactly.
even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
This is powerful stuff.
It is.
But I can't help but wonder,
Yeah.
what if everyone around you
Mm-hmm.
isn't operating with integrity?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you maintain your own integrity
Right.
in a system that seems to reward dishonesty
Mm-hmm.
and cutthroat tactics?
That is the question
That is the question.
that we are going to answer next time.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned for part 3.
All right, so we're back, and I'm still kind of wrestling with this idea of like maintaining integrity when everyone around you seems to be playing by a different set of rules.
Yeah.
I feel like you're constantly swimming upstream.
Oh, totally. And Jensen actually brings this up.
Okay.
As one of the factors in the veil of invisibility,
Okay.
it's this belief that everyone does it.
Right.
Like, we convince ourselves that out of integrity behavior is justified because it's the norm.
It's just how things are done around here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we lower our standards to fit in,
Right.
even if it goes against our values.
Right. It's that whole, if everyone jumped off a bridge.
Right, would you jump too?
Exactly. And Jensen would say that's incredibly dangerous thinking
Okay.
because it allows us to abdicate personal responsibility.
So you're letting everyone else off the hook.
Totally. We're like, it's not my fault. Everyone else is doing it.
Right.
And that becomes another layer of the veil,
Okay.
obscuring the impact of our choices.
But if you're the only one holding the line on integrity,
yeah.
doesn't that make you kind of a target?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're seen as a threat to the status quo?
It's definitely a risk.
Right.
And I think Jensen acknowledges that.
Okay.
But he also argues that it's precisely in those moments of challenge
Right.
that our integrity is truly tested.
So it's like trial by fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
And where the greatest rewards lie.
So it's not about being naive
Right.
or expecting everyone to suddenly become saints.
Exactly.
It's about making those conscious choices.
Yes.
Even when they're hard.
Mm-hmm.
And staying true to your values.
Totally.
Even when it feels like you're standing alone.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you actually do that?
Right.
How do you cultivate that kind of inner strength?
I don't think he gives like a simple answer,
Okay.
but he emphasizes the importance of like support systems.
Okay, so surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, people who share your values,
Okay.
who can offer encouragement and guidance when you're facing those tough decisions.
Find your tribe.
Yes.
Who gets it?
Yeah.
Even when the rest of the world doesn't.
Exactly.
It's about building that network of support
Mm-hmm.
to help you stay the course when the pressure's on.
Totally. And also cultivating self-awareness.
Okay.
Like regularly checking in with yourself. Examining your motivations, your actions.
Right.
And being honest about any areas where you might be compromising your integrity.
Even in little ways.
Yeah, even in subtle ways.
Right.
Because it all adds up.
It's like we've been saying this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity is not a destination.
Right.
It's a journey.
It's a process.
Yeah, of self-reflection.
Yeah.
And course correction.
I love that.
And I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
We've explored this idea of integrity
Mm-hmm.
from so many different angles.
So many.
From its surprising definition to its impact on our lives,
Our work.
our work,
The systems we operate in.
everything.
Everything.
So as we close out,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you really want our listeners to remember?
Hmm. The one that really stuck with me
Okay.
is that when people honor their word,
Mm-hmm.
trust emerges almost instantly.
Hmm.
And I think that's powerful because it reminds us that integrity isn't just about avoiding bad behavior.
Okay.
It's about actively cultivating trust
Trust.
with ourselves and with others.
And that trust is the foundation for everything.
Right.
Strong relationships.
A thriving society.
A better world.
I love that.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
Challenging, thought-provoking,
Yeah.
but ultimately incredibly empowering.
I agree.
Thank you for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And for our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring this concept of integrity.
Yeah.
Reflect on those 6 parts of your word.
Mm-hmm.
Be mindful of that veil of invisibility.
Yes.
And how it might be obscuring the true cost.
Out of integrity behavior.
Yeah.
Such a good one.
And most importantly, ask yourself,
Okay.
what's one small area in your life where you can start being more intentional
Yeah.
about honoring your word?
Love it.
Remember, even those small acts of integrity can create a ripple effect
Yes, they do.
that transforms your life and the world around you.
Totally agree.
Until next time,
Keep diving deep.
keep diving deep.